Item 11 will be presented by Ludo Campbell-Reid. Ben, I've just got to remember your... Van Bruggen, that's the one. And Tim Fitzpatrick. And Lisa Dunshea. And Ludo is, of course, the GM of our Auckland Design Office and our design champion for the city. And Ben is a recent acquisition, if I can say acquisition, who's come from the UK to manage the Urban Design Strategy Unit. Tim, we all know, he's in charge of city centre design. We've seen him in meetings on waterfront projects. And Lisa Dunshea manages all the design reviews. So we're going to get a bit of a snapshot of the body of work that the ADO undertakes on a daily basis. Ludo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Mayor Phil, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, IMSB board members. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's great to be here. Happy New Year. You've done the introductions already, so it's great, but I thought I'd come with my full team rather than just me. There's a lot to the programme, much more than Ludo, and so I wanted to showcase my team, my incredible team of people here. So thank you for the opportunity to showcase what we're up to with the urban design programme across the council. Just behind us, sort of in effect, are many people, but we have an incredible team of some of the most talented urban designers in the world, and it wasn't very many years ago when there were about 2 or 3 urban designers in Auckland, and you can really see the investment in a whole array of incredible, talented people. So I wanted to thank them really for the work that they do. Particularly, I wanted to make sure that the councillors know who these people are, because they're very special and very good. So I'd like to acknowledge them. I'd like to acknowledge Henry and the work that he's doing with us, collaborating with us on the Design-Led City programme. I also, as Councillor Darby talked about, Chris, you talked about we're very lucky to have these people, these allies, this army outside of this organisation that can help us and work with us. So Ben and Harriet, people like that, passionate but also very good at what they do. I mean, they're specialists at this stuff, and it's really great to have them here. So we're all part of a team. The barriers are dropping down, and we're working together, and that's what design can do. It can bridge divides, it can bridge professional divides and also political divides, and I think it's all about good design at the end of the day. So what I'd like to do today is a brief update. We've got 15 minutes. What we're looking for is a focus on 3 recommendations, really. You're not asked to be making decisions today, but to acknowledge firstly, to work underway across the group, to drive world-class urban design outcomes across the region, to acknowledge the critical role of the private sector in achieving our collective design-led aspirations, and lastly, to reaffirm the importance of Auckland Council's commitment to urban design quality across the region, the Auckland region. There's more to urban design than city centre, and that's really one of the big messages today. So what I'd like to do, in terms of the world-class role, urban design and the role that urban design plays in delivering the Mayor's vision of a world-class city and a place where enterprise and talent want to thrive. Urban design quality is absolutely of the utmost importance. In terms of those who see urban design quality as an expensive add-on, this slide is a useful slide in terms of understanding the value of design. It's just a little bit slow on this presentation today. I'm not sure what the... There we go. So if you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design. And there's this focus on the long term. We need to stop making decisions that are immediate, but think about our children and their children. It's about legacy. And as we've also witnessed in our competitor cities, Melbourne, Sydney, Seattle, I mean, they're all competing with us for smart people, for jobs, for services, for tourism. You can't have great cities without inspired urban design. So in terms of our promise to Auckland, and I've heard Councillor Darby talk a lot about this, and as part of the deliberations through the unitary plan processes, we made a promise to Aucklanders that we would deliver quality urban design. And the provisions of the unitary plan are more permissive and less directive around the quality of urban design. So the important role of the Design-Led City programme is to ensure that we have the full set of tools and resources, the statutory, non-statutory levers to achieve the city that we want. And so it makes the role of the whole department, the whole programme, even more important. So our program really and our approach is, it starts with this: what is a city but its people? It is, cities are about people, and in New Zealand you have this amazing concept of what is the most important thing or the most precious thing in all the world. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is people, it is people, it is people. And if you apply that approach to cities, you design people cities. If you apply an anti-people approach, you build a city which is anti-people. And so it's understanding that as part of the program. We have a 10-point plan, which I'm not going to go through today, but it's in the reading notes. Which is, let's just move on to this slide, Kalinda. It's just going to take too long to load up. But there are 10 programs within our department, a range of attitudes and processes and programs which are covered in the Design-Led City book, which you I can also send it through to you. Kalinda, do you mind just pressing the button rather than me? It just seems to be slow. This is a book about the changes in Auckland. There's photographic evidence over the last 11 years, the before and afters of every single project that had been worked on in this organisation with the private sector. And it's very exciting to see. Next slide, please, Kalinda. And there are projects happening now across the region, not just the city centre or the city fringe or city suburbs, but extraordinary works of art, of architecture, of urban design, of placemaking, of transportation that are happening across the region. The MIT program in Manukau, Otahuhu Station, Otahuhu, Te Oro Music Centre. I mean, these buildings and spaces are world-class. The Mayor has set us a benchmark of being a world-class city. Well, we are delivering world-class architecture, but it is not prevalent everywhere yet. It is something which we are momentarily doing. Next slide, please, Kalinda. You know, Takapuna and Hertzmere Green, the transformation, you know, when members of this committee were involved in this, you know, extraordinary change around it. People talk about saying that the space was working on the left. Well, it was not working. There was nobody there. But transformed through urban design and landscape architecture, it has increased the numbers of people by 1,500%. That's quite a big change around. Next slide, please. And Te Arawhiti, which you all know very well, transforming an old redundant motorway into a shared space for people and walking. It's literally put Auckland on the world map. Next slide, please. And our waterfront, which we all know, 2009, next slide please, 2015, 16. It's been remarkable, the turnaround, very, very quick, and we should be very proud of that. So, just wanted to say a couple of things to finish before I introduce my team. You know, we're getting international recognition for what we are doing. Our special mention in the Lee Kuan Yew Prize in 2016. This is like the Oscars for our program for cities, and a third, you know, a recommendation in that is fantastic. We also have international educational establishments, like, next slide please, like the Randstad from Seattle, groups who've come over to Auckland to study Auckland. People didn't used to study Auckland for urban design. They used to go to elsewhere, like Seattle or Toronto or Melbourne or Vancouver. But they're all coming here now, urban nerds we call them, people who want to talk about our city and who are starting to show us what a great city we have. And lastly, you know, our media have been fantastic too. You know, they're getting on board and they understand when something's done well. They've reported honestly and authentically about the positive benefits of the changes that you see. So I'd like to now introduce Lisa Dunshea, who's the leader of our design review program, who's going to talk about the work that she and her team are doing.
Okay, thank you. Kia ora, everybody. I have been to committee before. I've been in Auckland Council for 6 years now. And we head up the design review part. There's 3 parts to Auckland Design Office. And this weave diagram helps to sort of like explain our positioning with the city centre team, which Tim heads up, the urban design strategy team, which Ben heads up, and then the design review team. And cross-cutting that, we've got the design review panels, Auckland Conversations, Maori Design, Ludo's role as design champion and also design champions, and with the work we do with Auckland Transport and also the work that we do with Panuku Development Auckland. So it's looking at urban design in a very holistic way and using the Maori design weave to show how we integrate with others. So we're working a lot across council. It's not just one single point of urban design. We're drawing together on lots of different parts of urban design because that's fundamentally the philosophy of urban design, is working with others. So a little bit more about the design review unit. We've got 22 people working in that unit, and we look after all of the statutory and non-statutory inputs into urban design for the whole region. So that's including the city centre and the rest of the outer region where a resource consent is required. So we provide an SLA to the resource consents team. We're typically reviewing 10% of all of the resource consents that come through. That equates to about 1,400 reviews that we get involved with, pre-apps and resource consents. And we also provide a unique service, which is Auckland Urban Design Panel, which many of you may have heard of. We also provide into that, for council projects, the Council Projects Review Panel. So we provide 2 panel services. And Henry, who was up here earlier, is a panel member on our Auckland Urban Design Panel. So we rely a lot on the external professionals coming in and assisting us with that. Okay, sorry, I've gone ahead a bit too soon. Okay, so just a little bit more about the design review panels. We said it's non-statutory, so this is an extra lever that council has working with developers, because we are the key design interface with the development industry in a resource consent situation to do with urban design. So we use panels as a lever to raise the design quality bar to get better urban design outcomes. It's been operating for 12 years. As it said up there, we've got 43 panel members and advisors across the whole property and design industry. The Property Council are very much a part of it. And we have a governance board to manage all of the details of what we do within that whole programme. And that typically, just to give some numbers to it, is reviewing 1% of all of resource consent applications. But they are the key critical ones that are being looked at, and they set a design quality bar for other projects to follow. Just to share with you very quickly some 3 project sheets. Some of the projects that Ludo brought up earlier, Te Roa, also the Manukau Institute of Technology, they were all projects that went through the council's projects design review panel. So these ones I'm going to show you have gone through the Auckland Urban Design Panel process, and also our specialist urban designers have input to them also. So this is one at 85 Customs Street. It's now consented, and the idea here was to try and get a taller, slimmer tower structure and to integrate the heritage setting of the lower podium buildings, integrating green and sustainability into the tower form and to some of the balconies. The next one here, Shortland Street. Again, it's looking at the tower form and how to create that cloak effect that the architects was trying to get at. And again, looking at how it interfaces with the heritage and how to make the best use of through-site links, because that's where the people integrate at pedestrian level. And it was moving things like staircases around to get better space flowing through the building. Skipped on. Final one, this one was back in 2014. You may be familiar with is the Akarana Marine Sports Centre down on Tamaki Drive. And this one again was looking at the shape and form of the building, and it was working with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei in getting a shape for the building and making sure that people were invited in through the building by creating better public space at ground floor level. That's some of the key things that we're involved with. There's a lot of technical detail that sits behind all of these projects, but essentially that's where we're adding value in the regulatory process. I'll pass on to Ben.
Thanks, Lisa. Kia ora. Good morning, everybody. So the Urban Design Strategy Unit is a team of 5 full-time and 4 part-time. Our aim is to inspire, enable and celebrate great design in Tamaki. To inspire, to celebrate, to enable great design. We do this through collaborative working, and we seek out evidence for better design outcomes and to show people how they can achieve these things, to show them how they can achieve it. We work to build the awareness and capacity in place-based design. One of the ways we do that is through the Auckland Design Manual. In 2010, with the formation of the council as it now is, this provided the opportunity to collate and to align the city's legacy design documents into one place. And this became the online resource of the Auckland Design Manual. It has evolved since then and now provides best practice and some well-researched case studies showing people how to achieve better outcomes and interpretation of the unitary plan rules. Today it has local and international appeal. It's highly regarded by the professions and has 118,000 users registered. We're also working with working on programmes led by people such as Plans and Places on these spatial planning projects. We cannot have a world-class city without world-class new developments, and we seek out quality, not just quantity, of our developments. If we don't do this, we will simply in danger of repeating the past mistakes. We're also acknowledging the work that others do. Here, for example, in Panuku, where their team of in-house urban designers and placemakers are working to shape places right across the area, across the region. Let's get back one. There we go. Ah. Excuse me. Let's try it one more time. There we are. We're also working with organisations such as Auckland Transport, supporting the development of the Roads and Streets Framework and the Transport Design Manual. Tim and his team have been instrumental in reviewing this document and inputting into it. It seeks to guide street design and local place identity, focusing on the users of spaces and not solely on the movement of cars and traffic. We'll be further assisting AT to improve the outcomes from place for walking and cycling initiatives. We're also helping and assisting on projects such as the Amity Busway and also the mass transit, or the potential of the mass transit, seeking to maximise the contributions that great design can make to a quality compact city. We also promote the awareness and raising standards of design and building streets for all people. It's too often forgotten in the design stages of new buildings and spaces. Elise Copeland leads this work for us. There are some good examples in the city centre, and we must learn from these. In July 2017, the Auckland Design Manual hosted a new universal design tool, helping designers and others with universal design. It had 3,600 users in its first week, so that highlights the importance of the topic. In partnership with Be Accessible and LifeMark, we're now planning a conference in September focusing on accessibility, housing and tourism. And then also the ADO hosts the Maori Design Hub. This is led by Phil Rahongi and his team. It's building very strong relationships with mana whenua groups, with council groups and with others. It has an innovative internship programme which is now underway, which combines the work in the council with private practice and with education. Phil's team also researching and providing evidence basis for the work programme, working with REMU, and also working on the Maori Design Hub for the Auckland Design Manual. They've recently completed, or in the process of completing, a city centre Maori design audit, tracking exactly all of the elements of the city centre design where there has been some form of input or representation. And also grounding the Te Aranga design principles in Tāmaki. This will also go into embedding the Maori design in Auckland procurement for public sector projects. Thank you. Pass the button.
This is not working that well, this one, so see how we go.
Okay, we'll address the hardware break.
Humidity. Kia ora, everyone. As Chris mentioned, my team have been in front of you quite a bit last year with several workshops, so just want to sort of recap quickly on that work that we did and where we're going forward in the next year, and then just start off just with a very brief overview on really the three sort of areas that have been a bit squished up there on the screen of work that we do in the city centre. That work is the design strategy, which really looks at the centre city master plan refresh, We did research and reported on the business case for walking last year, work we did with REMU, working on with Auckland Transport on the design manuals and roads and streets frameworks and the like. We have a project design unit which really looks at council's key input into council and projects in the city centre. So Karangahape Roads, Laneways Circuit, Federal Street, High Street, and obviously the downtown public works. So that's both in terms of forming up projects and the input as those projects go into design phases. And the third area is the activation and development response. The activation team has been growing almost daily, strength by strength, and has taken on board more recently a broader remit of development response, which is going to be a strong emerging component as we move forward this year. So last March we came here with 3 projects. We had the downtown and public spaces, Quay Street, the ferries, and the integration of those projects. That work is now brought on, including the America's Cup 36 coordination into that work. We brought in Midtown, which has Wellesley and Victoria Streets, Victoria Linear Park. The stage 1 of that is now shaping up rapidly as we've needed to coordinate that with the City Rail station entrance, which is out to tender at the moment. So that's a reality that's happening. So that work has needed to be brought up very quickly onto it, and then we'll bring out the further wider context of Linear Park into a design and consultation process. In Wellesley Street, the Auckland Transport are working through the business case, which will include this year consultation on that option, integrating with the universities for the proposal, which was referred to as the crossover option, and equally working on service relocations up front, because there's work happening very soon as part of CRL that we're making sure we're planning that work in terms of what the designs are going to require on both Wellesley and Victoria Linear Park, so that we're staying true to that dig once sort of approach and putting things in the right place. Those 2 projects have really moved on from that design strategy phase into that project design. So we're working that team now, in the briefing and the setting up of the urban design and public realm inputs to those projects. Queen Street was the 3rd project that we brought, and that's probably still at that broader strategy and integration phase. We're now working closely with the Mass Transit, looking at how that the implications of light rail into the city core, and specifically a really strong focus on understanding the legacy outcome of the construction of that project, and equally the construction management across the city. Talk a little bit more about that as we move in to talk about too quick. Here we go. Activation and development response. So our activation team continue their coordination and support of a thriving business and vitality in the life in the city. This Thursday, our mayor will open the Parongorongo Information Hub, which will be a piece of work that the team's been working on for a significant amount of time now, actually. But more recently, the team have moved ahead working in partnership with CRLL to develop forward-thinking and coordinated construction planning. This is a holistic approach to city development that looks at the legacy of sustained period of growth, how it's coordinated with such elements as service and delivery access into the city, how do we maintain construction access for the $10 billion plus of private development that's had in the city, so that our infrastructure projects are not halting that progress or development. How we maintain visitor attraction during that process, retail success, and an attractive resident amenity over that period. So that's a collective process. So I'll end on this last slide. Let's jump ahead. Kalinda, can you help me with that, just to get to that? Back a bit. Back, sorry, the other way. Back. Just before there. I'm missing a slide, perhaps. I'll just speak to it broadly. It brings us really to what you might hear from us or see in the next year. The emerging projects, downtown and waterfront projects, our design strategy projects, which will focus on this city centre master plan refresh. Our implementation strategies from the last year's work has informed that and identified areas that need further work. That's possibly Hobson and Nelson, but significantly it's the coordination of the Ports master plan into a Key Park master plan, Grafton Gully, potentially a proposition for Albert Street tunnels. That work is all centred around an area known as Waipapa, which is of huge significance to Māori, but is currently not respected. And the university quarter. Bringing those things together holistically into a vision plan for the city, respecting the C40 initiatives that the Mayor's Office is running. That'll be a major part of the content that we will prepare for any master plan refresh, and all of that within the context of how do we make sure that we have a construction plan coordinated for the city. We're working across the council family, so we've been putting a lot of effort into trying to bring council family to invest the energy into having forward thinking in terms of access and a thriving city, and that's what we call a development response. So
Thanks,
it's the
Tim.
city centre unit. Thank you.
So just wrapping up, and we're probably running out of
Tim, sorry.
running out of time here. But the last slide for us in terms of the programme is this slide really around championing things. And at the end of the day, you know, promoting and celebrating the value of our city, the changes in our city, the positivity in our city is something that we all need to step up. It's not just about elected members, it's officers across this council. There's 9,500 people here. You know, imagine if every single one of them was the passionate champion for their city, how much power that would have when you go home to barbecues and at weekends. You could really turn a whole country or a city around in terms of feeling good about itself. So we have a really strong program around advocacy, whether it be social media, through all the different promotions. We also have one very important program called the Auckland Conversations, which many of you will have attended over the years. It's been running now for 11 years, and it's a way to change minds, to change a city, because if people believe that they can achieve something, they often can. But you need to understand what other cities have done. And so Susan Quinn has done an amazing job with that program. We appointed her back in 2007, and she's been leading that program. She's moved to community facilities last month, so I really wanted to say to you guys that she's been an amazing, incredible woman who's done an incredible job, and I would like to acknowledge her. The slide that she produced, next slide please, Kalinda. Gosh, it needs to speed up this stuff. There we go. Over 90 speakers over the last, since 2011, over 170,000 attendees. That's a large program of engagement for this organisation, and there's some great stats around things that are happening there. So that's really the role of the Auckland Conversations program. Next slide, please, Kalinda, and we'll wrap up. A lot has happened. And I think that the organisation, the council, the citizens of Auckland should be very proud of how fast their city is turning itself around. It wasn't very long ago that we had Metro Magazine talk a little bit about Auckland's shame, its urban design. And today, the same author, 2006, it's become so common to be proud of Auckland, we forget how recent the feeling is. But even 10 years ago, the general feeling was cynicism. And I think it's a really powerful turnaround of a city that is growing up and maturing. So I wanted to finish on one last point, which is really that despite the challenges that we've got, One of the challenges is to provide a better value and support to the region. We are seen as often a city centre team, but as you can see by the breadth of the work that we do, we are a regional team, but we get a lot more, I suppose, advocacy and noise around the central city, but we're working across the region. But the challenge is how to do our work across the wider region. It is a big place, and there's, it's a big issue for us. We need super suburbs, super town centres for a super city, and that's really the vision that we have. The second one is ensuring we get input into council projects at an early stage so we can shape them. We were not involved in some of the walking and cycling projects recently delivered in West Lynn and so forth. We have now been approached by AT, and they've asked us to review their entire walking and cycling programme against best practice urban design. So we will now be involved, and we will work together collaboratively. And the last thing is to ensure that we get input into large projects such as the Crown, HLC, and also Panuku in the private sector. The big issue for us is just simply it's a matter of scale, and we can't be everywhere. So those are the three messages. So a great deal has been achieved, Mayor and councillors. A lot of things have been learnt. The key thing for us, I suppose, is lessons, is that we've had leadership from the top for a long time now. It's bipartisan support for the urban design programme. We've had huge support from the private sector for what we do, not only showing by the value of the quality of projects they're delivering, but also for the things they're supporting, like the Auckland Design Panel and the TMDA. But lastly, there's a renewed interest in design from Aucklanders. They want a better city. They really are much more attuned to what they want than they used to be. They have expectations from us, and we made them a promise, and we shouldn't let them down. So that's really what this is all about, is about keeping the focus going forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to you all. So I'll take some questions in a minute. Members, ordinarily we'd probably see this material in a workshop, but I thought, given where we want to take Auckland and that design-led focus in our future, I think it was really good to bring it all together in this place and air it amongst us, but also to allow other interested parties, Aucklanders, to tap into this work. So we often treating with Tim on city centre projects, or Ben on strategy, or Lisa on reviews, and of course we're interfacing with Ludo quite a bit. But to actually put those disparate parts of the unit together, you actually have a very powerful unit that is reaching right across this organisation now, and as Ludo just highlighted, as of last December, has formalised a relationship with Auckland Transport to review some major projects there. I think it goes beyond walking and cycling. So it's an integral part of our organisation, and I value it hugely, and I know other elected members value this unit equally. So, question, Councillor Casey.
Well, thanks, Ludo. I've got two questions. My first question you segued nicely into, and it was about, you didn't mention the word local board at any time, and you did mention the Westmere Cycleway, you didn't mention the Mount Albert Town Centre, both of which have been problematic and are symptomatic of change. So what is your relationship ongoing with local boards who are responsible for those projects and liaising with Auckland Transport? That's my first question. My second one is, I love the inclusive, welcoming city, and I want to know how you're going to check with the disability community, our older people, and our homeless community with regard to whether it actually is inclusive. And, you know, as I said to the other presenter, we've still got a sign across the road just from here saying don't stand in the doorway or the water spray will be activated. So what's your stance on defensive architecture, both into the future and getting rid of the stuff that's there already? Easy questions, really.
I'll try, and then if my colleagues think that they can add, please come in. So, Councillor, they're great questions. The first thing around local boards. So, one of the things, we don't have the ability to get around everywhere, so we're working with local boards that contact us and support us. The local boards are doing a lot of work across the business with other groups and departments, plans and places, community facilities, the community empowerment groups. There's a lot of work with the local boards. But what we thought we would do was we would like to set up a Place Champions local board network where we would ask each local board to not nominate but provide us with a senior politician within that local board area and be part of in effect part of that virtual group or in a part of the virtual team. And that's, we understood that there was, as part of the local board induction program and as part of a survey that was undertaken by Democracy Services about what local board members would like more of. And one of the things they talked about was placemaking skills and urban design skills. So we would like to train them, not to be experts, but to be more aware about the issues that are affecting their local board area. So we're going to develop up a networking program, a forum where they can come together as a group and be part of this story. So if they then need work done in that local board area, we will be involved in that. The other part of it
When is that, Ludo? When is that going
well,
to be?
we're setting that up as we speak. So we don't. It's not. We can't force the local boards to do it. They just have desire to be educated more in that space. So we thought we would do that, and that would make a lot of sense. The second part of that is that with the projects you mentioned earlier, I mentioned about the cycleways and so forth. It goes back to Chris's point earlier, that these large projects, these transport projects, aren't just transport projects, they're urban regeneration projects. And seeing a project as simply a piece of infrastructure is wrong. So that's what the placemaking component of that is. We are looking at a program where we will involve local boards in that review of those local projects as part of our process, which we think is quite an innovative way of bringing the local board politicians into that program. So we're developing that up as we go forward. So that's part of the desire to see Auckland, for Auckland Transport, want to see the local boards, the ADO, like Auckland, and themselves involved in these projects rather than just them. So there's a couple of answers there. The inclusive city, well, it goes to the very heart of designing a city for people. And with Elise Copeland, who works in Ben's team, she's leading the universal design. It's a city for all, access for all. And so we have the guidance within the unitary, we have in the Auckland Design Manual. We undertake training programs. We review projects against best practice in inclusive design. And it happens in Lisa's area, in the private sector world, but also in the public projects. In terms of the homeless program, it's part of something which is much wider than what ADO can achieve on its own, but there are bigger programs around homelessness and housing, which the Mayor, I know, is tackling or addressing through a range of programs. So it's about housing people, and it's much more integrated to social issues as well, education and health. There's a lot more to it than just simply the design. So we've created a public space called Griffiths Gardens outside this building for the homeless. We provided a community fridge, which has, I think, fed 15,000 lunches for free from local businesses who have donated their food for homeless people. I mean, we've also provided them with a cover so they can get protection from the rain and a place where they can come together. So we can change the world, but it's going to be bit by bit by bit, and it needs a whole army of people to do this. So I hope some of those responses answer some of your questions.
Thank you. I've got 7 members wanting to ask questions. Councillor Simpson next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ludo, thank you. And I think one of the things that we often forget is what we used to look like, because we're so often looking at today. So some of the slides that you showed, the before and after, I think just remind us potentially how far we've come. Look, I'm interested in the joined up urban design between the council operation. It sounds like, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, so I'd like clarity around that we've sort of got a bit of a double up. We've got design working through you and your team, which looks quite big actually, maybe 50 people. We've also potentially got design people in Panuku, design people in Auckland Transport, and we've just heard via a question before me that potentially, you know, when local boards are looking at a project, they don't even know to go to anywhere. So I just wonder how well we are connecting the urban design elements throughout the wider council family, and what potentially you think that we could do to tighten that up and do it better.
That's a great question. So, I mean, the aim of the programme is to collaborate, and we talk about an Auckland Council community of practice. The fact that Auckland Transport and Panuku have an urban design team, for me and the team, is a success. They don't have to. They can do what they get funded by the organisation, and they're a council-controlled organisation. But in terms of the people they employ and the skills they utilise, they could appoint whoever they like. The fact that they do have an urban design team, a lot of them are from my old team, so we started to infiltrate into their program. So it's a good sign, and we work together with them on a whole range of projects. But I think what probably best way to answer this is that there is so much going on, and it's very difficult just with the people we have to be everywhere that we need to be. So that's why the program is about a sort of collaborative educational piece. There's a whole training and an empowerment and a capacity building element to it, but really it's there's quite a small amount of people. So we work together on some of the bigger projects. Some projects we just can't touch because Panuku are involved, and some projects at Auckland Transport we don't see because we just don't have the resources, but they have their own staff. So one of the challenges is keeping us all at a similar benchmark of quality control, and I think that's something we're working on, working more together. But yeah, I think.
Councillor Clow.
Did that answer you?
Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, and mine follows on from Councillor Simpson. I've got a couple of questions. I think, and maybe it's to you, Mr. Chair, I think we need to perhaps influence and infiltrate our CCO process to ensure one point of truth. And I acknowledge, and I think Ludo's being very generous in saying, isn't it great that AT have got their urban design people and all the rest of it. I do think, though, that we have now experimented for 7 years, and I think we do need to haul some of this back into the centre. It needs to go out from our urban design unit or through our urban design unit. The fact that we've got 3 separate urban design units operating, I think, is not necessarily the best way to do it. So I guess, Mr. Chair, my question is, would it be sensible for us to have this bigger discussion as we review our CCOs? Because the urban design element through Auckland Transport, Watercare, and some of our big deliverers of infrastructure, to me, I think we are still struggling. So it's just kind of a process. Might that be a sensible discussion? And my second question is a little bit of a wider one, and it's along the lines of, have we forgotten the West? Is my question. And why I say that is because I get a little bit irritated with the discussion of we were terrible before and we're good now. Actually, I think the West is going backwards. The West led the way when other cities were not part of the urban design agenda, and it was a dirty word. We had urban design champions. We actually hosted international conferences, and we brought in people like John Argue, Jan Gale, all the rest of it. This is 20 years ago we were doing that stuff. We had 1% of the budget for any build towards art, and we knew about ped sheds before anybody else in the region did. So I guess my question is, can we just actually acknowledge some of that? Because although we're not the trendiest of places now, we were doing this before anyone else. And the reason why I raised the West, Mr. Chair, thank you for indulging me, is we put the environment right at the centre of that, and I think we need to hear more about environment in this. Fantastic pedestrian and cycleway areas also manage their stormwater well, and I think we just need to raise that flag every time we talk about this. So we are heading in absolutely the right direction, but let's not forget where some of this has come from, and let's not forget that when we are looking at these kind of presentations to people, you are going to lose great sections of our society if we don't adequately make sure that they have a voice or a presence in this. And the last little point, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry, this is not a question, it's actually a statement. The reason why we were able to make progress fast out west is because we took the time to educate our community board people, our staff and our elected members. We sent them to conferences. We actually sent some of them overseas. God help us, you'd never do that today. And we ended up having a very joined up and collegial approach to doing this. It was never a battle. So, Mr. Chair, I guess my one single question is, can we actually review some of this when we talk about our CCO reviews?
The answer to that is all under review. That's what Ludo's doing. When we had some issues with a particular cycleway and a few different infrastructure projects being led by one of our CCOs, Ludo, his office just went there and made an offer and they took that offer. And so that's headed off. It's not just that, though. There is a strategy in that approach, and that's Ben's job. And Ben is leading that strategy, not just within the organisation, but how it applies across the organisation. From what I understand of in my other meetings with these good four, is that we have those bases covered, and we have a few barriers along the way, and I think these staff know those barriers, and we are very gently changing those barriers from barriers to openings.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
that's happening right across the organisation. And Mr Mayor, in our recent letters of expectation that went out to CCOs, we've emphasised some of the things that Councillor Hulse is highlighting. So it's not like we have dropped the ball anywhere. This is a big body of work. And there was a suggestion in November or December when this paper was going to come that we might want to assign some political design champions, be it me or the mayor. And I sort of pushed back on that. I thought, we need to move past that and actually embed it in our culture. And we are all design champions, just as that slide on our screen asks us to be right now. So I think eyes are right, work is being undertaken, and the reach is large at the moment through the 4 divisions within the Auckland Design Office.
Awesome
And
answer.
a willingness at the CCOs that I have not heard so as strong as it is now, if I hark back to sort of even 3 years ago. Councillor Cloak.
Yes, Lisa, you pointed out that you run your rule over 10% of the consents. Do you run your rule over all of the public place consents, and do you run your rule over all of the council family consents / projects? That's my first question.
Over all of the council projects, no, we don't. So we've been running that programme for about a year fully, providing a review service, and it's been by invitation really. So we're slowly getting across the council CCO family in putting that invite out. So we've done it in a very collaborative way. We haven't been heavy-handed with it. We've sort of like said, this is a service that you can benefit from, and we've been testing the benefit of that. And I think we've now reached a stage where we can see this is adding value. We're getting good feedback from people. So this is the good timing to start building on that momentum, that drive, and getting more involvement. So whilst we've been reviewing quite a few of the larger city centre projects, but we also did Otahu train station, and we've recently looked at all of the streetscape upgrades up into Otahu town centre. So that's a critical connection working with AT. So where we've had the opportunity to get in there, we have really taken the advantage, and we've demonstrated the value add. I think now's the time where we can start to set that agenda more. That takes resource. So that goes back to the question, we'll add value where we can, where we think it's the best opportunity.
So that leads to my second question of Ludo. I mean, we're beating around the bush there about cooperation with the CCOs, and they haven't always all been cooperative, either with themselves or with us. So do you have an objective of trying to review all consents, all projects, at Panuku and Auckland Transport in particular, but obviously Watercare as well? Because we are all one family, and it is all investments made with public money. Wouldn't it be sensible for us to be, or your office to be trying to have a view over everything? And we need, and the cycleways have been a pretty good example. Greyland Cycleway, which is just a disaster of community consultation and arguably design in some ways. So, do you have any comments or goals there?
Again, a very interesting question. I mean, the challenge with the transport piece goes back to the points that the chairman made around that transport is part of the city. Transport serves the city, not the other way around. And so, where we've come up a bit difficult is where the place values and the movement values get confused, and you need the right skills to manage that process. So what we are doing with Auckland Transport is getting on board with them and getting close to them and showing them the real value of what we can do. So where we work together, you can see the work that Tim's been doing in downtown. His team's been amazing with that collaboration. I think that shows the power of this organisation. But it doesn't work well when we go silos, silos, silos. And so it's important we, as Lisa said, Ross, is to really build that relationship, because they are governed by a different program and different processes, and we are part of the same team. But we are working really closely, but it's a big program of work, and I don't think we can be everywhere. We just don't have the scale or the capability to do everything. And so we haven't been heavy-handed around the need to review council projects. But one thing about reviewing projects is that as part of every big project, the CCO will have to come and visit the council staff. That takes them 5 or 6 months to consult and go around different departments. What we're offering with the design review is one-stop shop, all the staff from the council in one room, one decision, one view. This is the way we're going, and that will give the councillors and the local board elected members a bit of confidence that the council family has seen the project and this is the best. At the end of the day, it's your decisions. We don't make decisions. We give you the best possible advice, and you can do with it whichever way you want. But ultimately, if we do those reviews, we will advise the local boards and the councillors of our input and our view, and then it becomes the councillor, politician's decision to go ahead or not. So that's really how that's what we plan to do.
Do you feel as though you need more oomph from us, and it can be through the letters of expectation?
Well, I guess today was partly to show you what we're doing and to give you awareness that we are here. If you see projects you would like reviewed or looked at, or you've got concerns, call me, let me know, and I will talk to the team, and we'll talk to AT or whichever group is the issue.
But I was not thinking so much of individual projects, just as an overall, through the letters of expectation, a direction to say we expect, indeed we demand greater cooperation. I mean, even the Mayor is listening to this, and he's following up with a question.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Sayers with the next question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions. One's to do around structure planning, and the other one's to do around the private sector. So just around the structure plans, Ludo, that are happening in Drury and Silverdale North and Warkworth. Will the Auckland Design Office have any input into the developments that will be happening there? And because I'm just trying to, you take 10% of the consents. Is that a straw poll? Does it have to be a certain size project? Just what the criteria? Do you see yourself having any involvement with those structure plans as they roll out in terms of the delivery of the projects that will be built there, or what does that depend on?
So Lisa's team look at the consents, which will be a downstream activity after plan changes or structure plans or precinct planning is done. So Lisa's team pick up those through the consents team through Penny Peret's area when we get asked to give expert advice into that programme as a subject matter expert. So that's Lisa's team's role. Ben leads the urban design input into those projects that you just talked about. We're working very closely in the south in Drury with John Duguid's team. John leads the whole area planning, precinct planning, structure planning programme for the whole region, and we are providing services to John's team in plans and places. So again, we don't have a lot of people. Ben talked about 4 or 5 people full time. This is a big project or big programme, so Ben and I and John are talking about how we can be smart about how we provide input to those projects. But do either of you want to say something about the structure planning process? Because, I mean, John, you know it intimately, and what are we doing to help you?
Briefly. Just very briefly, yes, the Auckland Design Office is involved in the structure planning for those areas. Resources are tight, just to be perfectly honest about that, but at this point in time, we have 2 or 3 urban designers on those structure plan projects, and that's getting us through to delivery in the next 9 to 12 months.
All right, okay. All right, thank you. The second question, Mr. Chair, was just to do with the public sector. You mentioned, Ludo, how you've got good support from the public sector, but a question that I've always had, and I'll just take this opportunity to ask you.
Public sector, you mean?
No, in the private sector?
Private sector, yeah.
Did I say public?
Yeah.
Sorry, so in the private sector. Yeah, I mean the private sector, thank you. That do developers see this as a, does it cost them more time and money, Ludo, to have to come through your office when their projects need to come through you? Like, are they seeing extra money, or do they see it as, you know, something that you ask them to change the design and they can be critical of that? Or just some comment on that, because I've just wondered about the natural tensions that might exist there.
I think Lisa's probably best to
I
answer
can help answer that question for you. I think there was the Motu report certainly criticised design review probably about 3 years ago in actually delaying consent timing. However, we've been very active in working through the Consenting Made Easy programme, of which urban design provides a critical part. And we're very clear on the direction of the input that we provide to the premium level service for developers. We work very actively with the consents team, and we're also working and engaging with the qualified developer. We're working a lot with Housing New Zealand. Since I've been managing the team, we're very conscious of our time input. We fully record everything through the Nucor system, and the advice that we're giving is quality advice, and it's consistent. So we've been working on what was essentially our burning platform of some of the issues that we had. I'm not hiding those away. We did have issues, and we've tackled those, and we've developed a strong design review team that are providing a service across the region, and we have a small pool of consultants that we draw on for some overflow when we find that we've got too much capacity. So to answer your question, yes, it can be an issue. We do seek feedback from our developers, and we also get feedback from our Auckland Urban Design Panel members around that. So the feedback that we have been getting verbatim is that our processes are adding value, and certainly the design panels are really adding value to the big projects. Hopefully that helps too.
No, it does.
It's a very big question, and I think the question is also important to say that the projects that the private sector build are not all good. You know, it's about, these projects will be there for 100 years. It's something you can't just erase, so the decision has a big impact. And so sometimes we have to be really stern, and we have to say, this is not good enough. And that's hard. So the skill is being able to say that in a way which then says, but this would work, and provide them with another alternative. Because, you know, we're just saying to you today, you know, we can build thousands and thousands of homes, but we need to build communities, and we need to build places, not just the numbers. And so if we want to build slums for the next 20 years, we can deliver the numbers, but we won't deliver great places, and then we'll be left with this big cost, a legacy cost onto our children and to their children. So without getting too emotional about it, I guess sometimes what we're saying to you is we need your support to say, that's not good enough, that's not the right quality that we want, and therefore we push back. And ideally what we want to do is align good design with a fast track through the planning system. That would be the ideal way. But Lisa's team are so busy with the AUDP, the panel. People used to see it as a bureaucratic hurdle in 10, 11 years ago. Now there's a queue to get through the door. It's like a personal endorsement of that project. It's like
we
a
have to move on, I think.
So
and I appreciate there's a very long answer in there too, but I'm going to have to go to the next
perhaps
question.
ask the private sector. I think that's the key, I'd say.
Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, some of the questions along the lines of Councillor Sayers as well, but I mean, I think the work that's been done is fantastic. One of the questions I had, though, is do some of these processes, especially when we've got so many design groups and so many CCOs involved, does it hold up the consent process? Because we get a lot of complaints, and we are struggling sometimes to meet our targets to get within the statutory timeframes, but we know we've got to get good design. Is that part of, that's one question, and I might just get the answer if I can just ask one more quick one.
Go, answer,
Bath, okay.
Ask both, and
so
then
the other one is, you know, one of the first pictures on your slide was the kind of foreshore steps, Admiralty steps, whatever you want to call them, and you see them all over the world. I've just been to Lisbon. It's fantastic, and there's people everywhere. Tauranga have just done this, just like that. Actually, a former staff member here is down there transforming that city. Lot to do, but has just done that just like that, and has literally transformed their downtown area. There are family. They've done a little park, the Harry McCleary Park. They've got the steps. They've got the kids diving off the wharves. they've got, you know, it's just gone like that. And we've been talking about ours for, God, I don't know, a decade, and we just, something that seems as simple as that we can't do. And I wonder, you know, we do have great dreams, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have them, we should do them, but, you know, are we tying ourselves in knots, having so much talk and not the do is my, you know, because I want this stuff to happen, but I just see how quickly that happened down there. And it's just amazing.
Can I just come in there?
So that's just the two questions.
Can I just say,
Basically
welcome to
about
the
holding
10-year budget discussion. That this team can deliver pretty much anything you would like or aspire to have, and then we're going to have to make some calls on budget. Because we can aspire all we like, but unless we tick off some budget,
Mr. Chair, I'm
that is a
asking
challenge.
about this process,
So that,
whether
look,
it holds
I
it
guess
up.
I'm just coming in here because just in terms of time, but that is the answer to that question.
Well, no, because I actually want to know whether the fact that we've got so many design officers and we're, you know, we tend to have a lot of consultation, but we get shot in the foot a lot, and then we go, oh, this group goes, no, we don't want this, and we want this, and we often just, it's so hard to get there. That's what I want to understand.
So last,
Ben or Ludo or Tim?
last year we made a lot of progress. From 2012 we had a plan that went out, it got stalled. I think last year, you know, in a relatively quick process, we're actually able to decouple and understand these projects and join them together. It's, you know, coordinating with Auckland Transport's infrastructure and public realm, and we're going to see that, you're going to see that over before 2021, a rapid development subject to the 10-year budget. You'll see a lot of the development. And I've worked on a lot of those projects. I've worked on New Plymouth, I've worked on Wellington, Porterfront, Oriental Bay, and those developments. And there are a lot of differences when you take the scale of a city and the complexities of interest in this larger city. But there's also a way forward to do it, and I think we're making a lot of progress there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Megolf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ludo and Lisa, Ben and Tim, first of all, thank you for your presentation and thank you for the work that you do, and please extend that back to your teams because I know that you're representing them. Look, I don't think you'll get any pushback here from anyone to the concept that you can't have a world-class city unless you've got good urban design. Never been in a city yet that's had bad and boring design that you would classify as world-class. So the work that you do, I think, is integral to the city that we want to be. My question follows really some of the others that have been asked around the table, and that's in relation to, you know, you've got a limited number of people and a limited amount of resource, so how do you use that resource? How do you integrate with other decision makers? And I just want to pose that question around three projects. The first is with City Rail Link Limited. I've seen the design of their stations. I think they're fantastic. I just wondered whether you've had input into that and you've been involved in that process, just to get a concept of how they've been working with you. The second is around Panuku Uplift and Transform. I imagine that you've been involved in that, but maybe if you can give us a little bit more information about how you work with Panuku and how joined up you are or not. And the third really is around the new greenfields developments, with particular reference to, you know, the sheer number of new affordable houses that we hope will be built. And it's about what you said, you know, we're trying to build communities, not just houses. So none of us want to, well, we've already got it, I think, and it's not just low-income developments. If you look out some areas of Flatbush, you'd say, if you were designing a city, would you really make it look like that? So how are you involved with those external organisations, and what, if anything, can we do to improve the way in which you can interact with them and the work that they are carrying out?
Thank you. Three good questions. Lisa, it might be useful to talk about CRL Limited, and just at the highest level, we have been working very closely with them, but at grade. So the public realm interface, where the CRL project meets the surface. We've had a lot of work with them on their station design, with impacts on Victoria Street and so forth. But the urban design team, not so much on the actual station design itself. It's something that has gone through the panel processes which Lisa runs. So the private sector panel that Lisa leads, that's where that urban design lift has come. But we've been involved in discussions perhaps in the background around art, opportunities for art being part of the station, not just a plonk art up on a wall, but actually the station as an art piece. So we work in a slightly covert way at times because you don't have the control over everything, so you have to work around the sides and work with your allies like Harriet and Ben, and it's not straightforward. It's not a straight line. Lisa, do you want to?
Yeah, I think to answer your question, Megoff, is that we're very actively involved. We do work with Panuku, and we are working with the CRL team, particularly as Ludo's just mentioned. We use the Auckland Urban Design Panel. It was actually put in as part of the development agreement that Auckland Urban Design Panel would be a review process, and we do use that with Panuku and with CRL. So that has been seen as adding the real value. Having external, independent viewpoint from different professionals as part of that, with our specialist urban designer providing the guiding report writing. That's how we've been working. So we've gone through a full review process with CRL, with Panuku. We do work with them. We have an alliance agreement. So again, they're using our Auckland Urban Design Panel process to influence and to again set the design quality bar for their big key projects. So we are actively working with Panuku on that, and also John Dogood and Plans and Places. We have an active forum where we discuss upcoming projects. Greenfield development, my unit are not as involved in the strategy side. Ben might be able to help a little bit there, but we do review the large subdivisions that are coming through, and we always are looking at those against best practice. So there is a lot of volume out there. There's a lot of action out in the greenfield. So we are seeing a lot of that coming through from the structure plans and things that have been referred to.
And going back to Lisa's point, Mr. Mayor, about the number of resource consents that Lisa's team looks at, 10% of 15,000 a year. You know, it's a huge program, bigger than probably most cities in New Zealand added together we deal with on a yearly basis. So Lisa's team, just with 22 people, cost recovered, all their work is time-sheeted. All their work gets charged back to the private sector as well. You know, we can't be everywhere, so we have to work in different ways. And your point about the Panuku team is really good. We do work closely with them, particularly we're working with them on the Henderson Unlock projects. But we're in the background. They lead the project. We're contributors to it. And they're board and they report through to you. So we don't have a lot of involvement in that process. But we're working with them on Manukau as well, and also on places like Northcote. But we have to be kind of very circumspect with what we get involved in, because if we chuck a few people into something, that would suck up their entire time. Light rail is a project you dream of happening in your career once, and they're all happening at the same time here. It's like a lolly scramble, and it's hard to know where to be strategic, and that's really what we're looking for. Where do you want us to be involved? What don't you want us to do? Where is our best value? That's probably the best message I can give back to you.
You asked what you might do to help to support. So certainly in the city centre, we want to get to this point where we understand what's important for the city, and all projects fit into that instead of being project delivered. So we've seen the disruption of CRL and the construction of that. That's the tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of the next 10 years for the city centre. CRL have made massive transformations in how they're dealing with that impact and how they understand it. And we need to transfer that through to our other large infrastructure projects. And so we need to have a plan for the city that those projects, private projects, the convention centre developments, road projects, fit into what access for everybody into the city and a thriving city, as opposed to the city running around and scrambling after whichever project comes first. So your support in that would be extremely useful.
Thank you for that, Tim. Councillor Hills.
Yeah, we're probably going over time, so just a comment rather than a question. But it's, I guess, looking at cycleways and other projects that have been a bit bumpy, my experience has been as a local board member and a councillor is that we've tried to please everyone. So taking people's consultation instead of taking people's feedback. So sometimes there's going to be times where you cannot make everyone happy, otherwise you can't do a project. So there has to be best practice, and there has to be safety concerns, and there has to be, we just can't do this project, or we should. Because often I've seen you go down a road or a section and yep, you try and please that person, which has a domino effect to the last person you tried to please, so then it doesn't please them, and then, yeah, so that's one concern. The other thing is, you know, some of the stuff is the most exciting things we do all together as a council body, Auckland Transport, everything, and this is the things that people enjoy about a city, and it's exciting. But it's the little things too that I think we need to have something going out to all contractors or something over time, like why do we see slippery tile at times like these, the amount of people who text me about they've just slipped on slippery tiles, or services that are allowed to have their power boxes in the middle of a brand new walkway, or whatever it is. Those just simple things that I sit there and go, why? You know, that it's great to have fantastic, awesome, well-designed things like Pink Path or Britomart or the waterfront, but it's those little things that people see every day that they just get furious. So if we had a raft of positive rules that could just go out to contractors and people to just go, this is actually not the way to do it. You know, because we can think big, but it's also those little things that every day people walk past and just get frustrated. But you probably don't have to comment, but yeah, it's just making sure we get best practice and let the public know that not everyone can be happy all the time. It's just impossible to do that.
Yep. Member Taipari.
Oh, kia ora, Mr. Chairman. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou I tēnei wā. Apologies for lateness and Leanne's absence due to tangi. I might be a little bit half-baked on this, so you'll correct me if I'm wrong. Got a couple of questions. The hierarchy in terms of New Zealand Urban Design Protocol and the Auckland Design Council Manual, what's the priority rating in terms of your usage of those? Because why I ask is the New Zealand Urban Design Manual is glaringly excluding much about Māori in it, and I just wonder as a tool how much emphasis you give to that.
So I can answer that if the team wants to say anything. So Member Taipari, I know where you're going. The original Ministry for the Environment Urban Design Protocol, written in 2005, did not consult with Māori well, and so Māori had issues around the concepts and some of the values and the outcomes that protocol suggested. There is a whole series of programs underway at the moment which are looking at reviewing that protocol and embedding we wouldn't say our version, but Tiaranga type of version within that protocol, the new protocol. With the new government comes new opportunities, and so we're going to get very, very close to the new government and to work with them to ensure that protocol, whatever it becomes, reflects and embeds the concepts you've been talking about. So that's not our process to run, that's the government, and so your feedback from your team and agency would go back to government on that. We would be part of government's consultation on that programme. With regards to the Auckland Design Manual, it is a non-statutory document, it is simply guidance. We see the Auckland Design Manual as a companion guide to the Unitary Plan. The Unitary Plan is where the absolute rules are given to the type of things we want. The Auckland Design Manual is guidance on best practice urban design. So it's the rules and the tools working together. Does that make any sense?
Maybe I've deciphered that it's New Zealand Urban Design Protocol, Unitary Plan, and the Auckland Council Manual in between is a second tier layer of guidance for you. So, okay, so it does concern me that without a guarantee of that amendment or change to the New Zealand Urban Design Protocol, Māori are left in the midst of the Auckland Council Design Manual as a guideline. All right, so I'd certainly encourage you strongly for your department or right through our council, should there be such an amendment to that protocol, that the things that you've just talked about be included, because if you're going to use tools that are, in my view, inept, what's the point in supporting the process, you know, because it's lacking, and that's a big concern. So I guess I'm trying to make the point, Mr. Chairman, that if we're going to talk about recommendations and applying tools and different things, those tools need to be adequate. And I'm concerned that at the moment they're not, particularly in terms of the answer there about one being a non-statutory protocol or document. The next question I have is Ngā Oho and Mana Whenua. So in the impact statement it talks about Ngā Oho met with Mana Whenua. What happened? And I guess is the first question I have. What relationship has Mana Whenua got with your, because other people, this is their whakapapa, this is their land, this is their history, this is their identity, and I'm trying to figure out in the context of all of this how and where they've been included. There's talk of engagement, but it just talks about it. And I'm not sure whether Ngā Oho as the medium for your group and Mana Whenua is the right approach versus a direct approach from Auckland Council. So, because Ngā Oho is professional advisors, I assume they're part of the structure, but they're not the council. And Mana Whenua deserves the respect of a direct engagement with Auckland Council. So, my question back again is in terms of what function Ngā Oho play for your group, and then where is Mana Whenua in your group?
So simply put, Ngā Oho are purely part of the Tamaki Makaurau Design Alliance, and they provide advice from the side into the work that we undertake, David. And they are, one thing I would say though that is important to say is that I believe that Māori design is Auckland's, the new chapter for design in Auckland is how we look and express ourselves more as a Māori city. But we need to deliver projects which tell that story. So that's where the idea of Tiaranga came up. If we review council projects against best practice urban design, we include and we ensure that Tiaranga design principles are adhered to. We write them into development agreements with precinct properties. We write them into development agreements with the development of the old Auckland Civic building. Those projects would not go ahead without our endorsement and without Mana Whenua involvement in that design process. So they will eventually start to permeate through every project that we deliver. So it's complicated, but I can't tackle the Mana Whenua integration with the council. We work our way through the various organisations and groups that are established by this organisation to provide us with Māori input. And just one thing to say is we've just taken on an intern, Ngāti Rehui, she has just started from the Ngāti Rehui tribe, and she has started on a 6-month internship with Auckland Council. She's working with Phil Wihongi, and she'll be also working with Jasmax and also with Isthmus, who are two of the top firms, and that's something which we've undertaken with the private sector. So it's small acorns trying to grow that capability.
Okay, so thank you. So I'm just trying to get some clarification around stuff, trying to get council to be better at what it does, not criticise it. I think it got a long way to go. I do, because I'm very alarmed about the box of the potential urban design stakeholder framework when there's, I think, a dozen boxes there. 7 of them, which is, one would say that's great, have Māori influence in 7 of the 12 boxes, but it's like a smorgasbord of confusion. And so I'm a little alarmed. And following on from the earlier statements before about, questions from Councillor Simpson around CCOs, and then we know CCOs have Mana Whenua engagement and other engagement in that. I'm just very concerned about the crossovers. And then when I asked again about the hierarchy and my sense around Ngā Oho, Mana Whenua, and then all the other groups, it appears messy at a look, okay? So, I mean, again, Māori need to be involved in my view. It's their story, it's their identity, it's part of the city, and we brand it out there like that. We have as part of our Auckland plan and all that thing. So I just want to get it right. Not exhaust everybody and kill off everybody in the meantime, and get some good results from it. So I was just saying, well, that's what I look at, and then because I'll get a slap if I didn't ask this question, I always will, but Mātou Waka, they seem not in it, and so maybe I think they're part of Communities of Auckland box. I don't know. But where are they?
Okay.
That's about it for now, Mr. Chairman.
No, good to be reminded again. And member Hinale.
Yeah, Ludo, just a supplementary on that. If you really believe what you said, how's that working out for the station, the CRL station design? One, I heard what you said before, but who's looking after it? Who's leading it? Because I sat down with Michael Parekowhai, one of New Zealand's great artists, who showed me what he had in mind for the whole of, that line that could mirror something like Moscow's underground.
Better.
Yeah. And shit, I don't know about any art or anything like that, bro. But I know that when you look at Moscow's underground, you know it's Russian. Okay. That's for sure. And you look at the Pomzen, that's theirs. You look at the Metro in New York and Washington, that's theirs. You know it's theirs. We look at. I hope I don't wake up one morning and go, where am I? I hope I don't wake up thinking that I'm in Melbourne. And you know what I'm talking about. So what power do you guys have to make that sort of thing happen?
We have no power to make that happen on the CRL project. It's governed by a completely separate, it's a crown and a council. There's a relationship, but we don't have power to change that design. We try to influence by introducing the Tiaranga principles into the project brief. We work on design review of the public squares that pop up, like we talked with the Mayor earlier, but we don't control that project. It's controlled by City Rail Link Limited, and that's not...
Can I speak a little bit to it, though? Because whilst that's true, this City Rail Link has had what most mana whenua engage with that process describe as very successful and leading engagement with it. And in the city centre, we're looking at, going back to the earlier comment, the moving more from just mana whenua forum engagement on projects, which has been the involvement, into how we can write into the city centre master plan more about Māori outcomes than measuring the number of engagements. What was the actual outcomes? And so we want to develop that with the Kaitiaki Forum. We want to put the measures into that. But equally, with the design of the city centre projects that we're running right now, we have collected, to deliver a really tight program of work, we've collected together 5 of our leading design companies. They were selected from a group of 9 companies that submitted. That group we're challenging and going on a journey with exactly that task of saying, how do we take it, the name of our collective initiative is From Auckland to Tamaki, and how do we actually embed that? So where we stand, which is in the design profession and in the design industry, we have influence on that very directly. We're working very closely with that. We went up to Kaihu Marae last week with that design collective to start that discussion and to start that from the right perspective, so that our designers are thinking about that, are challenged with that, and are helping us to define that and explore it and push it further. So it's fundamental to our program of design work, and we want to challenge ourselves for the next iteration of the master plan to look more to Māori outcomes than measuring number of engagements.
Sweet. Thank you. And just look, I have 2 questions, and then we need to close. And they're 2 key questions, and following on from question about CRL design and your interface there. So there's a big project that is coming to a decision shortly, and that's the location of the America's Cup bases, which has significant impact on that part of the waterfront. What's your interface with that selection process to ensure the very best design outcome?
Tim's team has been deeply involved in America's Cup downtown issues, so probably best to ask Tim to answer that.
So it goes back a little bit to the question on doubling up of resource. So we do have resource around the place. So Panuku have led that. We've in the city centre, we've been part of that working party to look at the criteria assessment that they use. We review their assessment. So whilst not leading it, we just effectively partner with Panuku rather than double up, and we're working through those issues with them.
Okay, so do you have oversight? Partnering, does that mean you have oversight of that project?
No, it's
Tim, you have oversight of all the other waterfront projects, and you've brought those to us here with Panuku. Do you have the same partnership on the AC36 site selection?
So we have a voice within that group. We don't sit above it. That's for sure. We input.
Okay, you're being very diplomatic, and I think I'm hearing the answer, which does concern me.
I'm not trying to mince the words here. They lead it. They have a strong team that lead it. We support them in what they do, and if we have differences of opinion, we're able to feed them in. But the structuring of it isn't that it comes through us. It's led through Panuku.
Led by them, decisions up through the council, through the committee, through yourselves.
Okay. Look, lastly, there's the one question that hasn't been asked here. There's been requests for to interface more with CCOs and resource consents in this area, addressing Māori design. This all comes down to resource, and earlier on in response to, I think, a question from Councillor Simpson, Ludo said, yeah, we could do that if we had the resource. I am fully aware that your budgets have been plundered over the last 6 years. So I want you to just tell us candidly, if we want you to champion a design-led city, are your budgets adequate to enable that, to deliver that?
I would need to do some work on that. I mean, I think what we're trying to do today, Councillor, is to show you because of what we do here is about trying to do the best we can with the biggest impact for the least amount of ratepayer money. That's what we're trying to do. So everything we do is trying to improve. But we can't do everything because we've only got a certain budget. So we're working within our budget, within our resources. And what we've done, I think, is a very smart programme of statutory stick stuff, which you can hit people over the head with and say, we require you to do this, otherwise do not pass go. But we also have a programme which is around enabling and encouraging and training, which is the soft and the hard, the carrot and the stick. So, of course, we could do more if we had more people. What we really need is your support to do what we're doing better and be more powerful and more successful at the things we do, rather than maybe jumping into a bigger thing, because that's just more people to manage and more budgets to manage. What we need is influence, and we need the councillors to support us. If you get a developer, perhaps, Greg gets the developer saying, we're having a problem with the Auckland Design Office, or design is an issue, it's slowing our project down. Sometimes it should slow the project down because the project is not good enough, and we are here to hold the moat to stop bad design happening. So I need to know that it's happening if we're getting critique about something. But a lot of developers can't wait to get support from the urban design programme because it's almost like a benchmark for their support. So look, I think there's a lot of answers to lots of different parts to cut the answer to your question, but I think we've got a really good programme going. We just need to get more involved in the CCO programme. We've got a design review programme that's going to look at that. It's also hard to compare, which is also what cities should do. If you think about Melbourne, I have a colleague called Rob Adams, who's a professor of urban design at Melbourne City. His department's 150 people, and all they have to look at is downtown Melbourne. We have it's not apples with apples. We've got a regional city, which Rob doesn't even touch different parts of Melbourne. He's just simply downtown. Tim is downtown Auckland, but Tim is not 8 staff. Tim works with Panuku, with RFA, with ATEED, and so the collective number is probably larger, but we're quite different. So, of course, we could all really do with more resources and more budget to do certain things, but we think we're doing really well with what we've got. We just need the political support right from the top that you have our backs because we have yours. You know, it's
Okay, well, thank you to all of you. I mean, you are doing some incredible work. In the last year, we have had some challenges, and while we've improved dramatically, there is still a long way to go.
Yeah.
We've only got to look back just a few months and look at challenges on Albert Street design, challenges on the linear park delivery, keeping to that course.
Yeah.
Yes, we've got back there, and that's, Tim, you've been leading that work, and you've been working with Auckland Transport hugely well. I can't help but think of if we had the roads and streets framework and the transport design manual in place, we wouldn't end up with issues. And it's only just been in place since November, so there are some designs like some cycleway projects in the Grey Lynn area that would not have been designed that way if we had had those strategic documents in place earlier. And I have got to acknowledge some people here, 2 members, because Liz Halstead from Auckland Transport, the conduit between her office and yours, Chris Beasley, another one, he's from Auckland Transport.
That's right, he's the TDM.
Those 2 individuals have gone out on a limb and they've had to push back in the CCO at Auckland Transport to get that new strategic direction across the line. It is going to change how 25% of Auckland, that is the transport footprint, is designed. They are that fundamental. Look, thank you all. Yes, we're doing well. It does concern me that we have, as I would say, we have plundered your budgets and we are still getting delivery out of you to this extent, but I know there's a point where our expectation cannot be delivered upon. And so that is a fundamental budget decision for us in our 10-year budget. Thank you all. It is moved. Can I have a second? Mayor?
Yep.
In the Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you. A, B and C, I won't read them out. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declared that carried. Can we come back at 12 noon, not by that clock, by our electronic clock, and then we will go straight to the congestion question.
Thank you so much for the time. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
How long what are you doing?
5 minutes.
Oh, cool.